You've been through 3 major episodes of burnout. When I saw that, I was like, "Wow."
Mhm.
What did it look like and feel the very first time before you even knew what to really call it or what the name of it was?
I would say, and it was pretty similar for each episode that I can identify, and for me, it was a lot of exhaustion. I was working obscene a number of hours, might be a good way to put it. And it hit to the point where like I wasn't getting enough sleep at night. My morning routine that usually grounds me for the day just kind of went out the window because I wanted to try to sleep more. And with that exhaustion, right? It was that overwhelm of physically I knew I couldn't keep going, but financially I didn't know how or what I could change.
Mm, mhm. Wow. You know, there's so many of us that go through that, myself included. The enormous
Mhm.
amount of hours, the 50 plus, 60 plus hours, just
Yeah,
not sustainable. Wow.
it's not.
Yeah. Many professionals, I think that they normalize burnout as it's just a part of the job. It comes with the territory. I used to hear that quite a lot. And I've
Mhm,
used that term myself.
mhm.
Uh, why do you think it's so easy to ignore the warning signs though?
I think there's a few reasons, right? I think one, we have this pressure from society, and some have labeled it where it comes from that the selfish needs and greed that we have to keep up with the person next to us.
Mm,
So we push and push. I think the second place that it comes from is a lot of leaders in the workforce, and I'll really lean into like corporate America, and it falls into other workforces.
mhm,
But leaders work a ton of hours, right? They're, I'd say, overcommitted to their job,
mm,
and they expect people to do the same, right? I always heard negative comments from leadership when people use their paid time to take some time off. And so I think that's part of it, right?
mhm,
Higher up leaders don't think anything's wrong with working 60, 70 hours a week and not
right,
taking breaks. And that doesn't help at all.
right. Wow. So you mentioned about leadership, but how did silence, not so much from the leadership, but even within yourself, how did that make burnout harder to face?
It was harder because I had spoken up for a long time, right? I've been on this health journey for a long time, and it's kind of been an up and down roller coaster, as everybody would probably describe. Um, and I knew at the bare minimum that I could not keep working 24/7 because I was, right? I had a day job, and then we had to manage our own crisis line, and we had some other things going on that kept me out at night too. And so for me, I was speaking up to leadership. I knew at least one thing that had to shift so I could start to recover. And the longer I was offered other solutions, right, felt like I wasn't being heard,
Mhm.
you just kind of get defeated and kind of retreat back into yourself. And that's kind of where I landed. I just retreated, um, and tried to figure it out until a doctor's visit that kind of hit my turning point for me.
Wow. You mentioned about speaking up for almost a year uh,
Yes.
in your response to my call for speakers to be on the podcast. What gave you the courage to advocate for yourself in that type of environment where you weren't even getting the time of day? You spoke up and you weren't even getting anyone to respond to you, but you have the courage anyhow to do it.
Mhm. Well, at that time, I think part of it came from I was in leadership. I wasn't just an employee. So with the organization I was at, right, people would consider I was in middle management, but I was kind of part of the executive team, meaning if there was something in the company that needed our CEO's attention and she needed input, right, I would get pulled. Several of us would get pulled into that. So I think being in leadership is part of what helped me have that courage to speak up. Because I know a lot of people won't. There's a lot of fear. But I also think part of it might be my personality too. I've always kind of been the person who I speak my mind, right? Whether people like it or not. Um, I try to be tactful and most of the time I can. But I also knew because I had experienced similar symptoms and burnout before, I knew I couldn't keep going. I knew physically I was going in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
And I think all of that gave me, right, the courage. And I did have some good support that helped me in that too, right? I mean, my supervisors would come meet with me or want to take me out to lunch and say what's going on. And I mean, I remember one time I actually cussed at my supervisor and everybody could hear it. I didn't care anymore. And that was right towards the end of that year where I'm just like, you're not hearing me.
Mm.
Um, but it's we have to advocate for ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Because nobody else will. And
Yeah.
as a leader, I tried to model that as much as I could.
Um, Good for you.
Mhm.
What did you have to grieve in order to walk away? Because I know that couldn't be easy, especially in that being in that leadership position,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I had to for me, it was the grief of the community. I had finally moved to a location where I truly felt like I was building my own community. I was connecting in the community,
Wow.
right? And it was, I wasn't just because moved from the city to kind of a smaller town at that time. Um, but it was a place I really loved being. And I had to leave. It wasn't just leaving the the position.
Yeah.
To leave the position meant I had to leave the town.
Mm,
And
okay.
that was probably the hardest part for me.
Wow.
Mhm.
Uh, so it essentially had to start over, it sounds like.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's must be a hard decision that you had to make. Uh, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me that you made that decision to protect your peace and what mattered to you most, though, than preserving your position. Is that correct?
I did.
Yeah.
Well, and it was also spurred from my doctor's visit because he
Mm,
said, your job is killing you. And if you
mm,
don't make a change, I can't help you. Right.
right.
And so it was hearing those words. And I
Yeah.
already knew internally that something needed to change. Right. But I didn't want to, at that time, I didn't want to leave the town I was in.
Mhm.
Um, but I did. I had to put my own health first because when my doctor said that, I knew that if I did not, I possibly would not be sitting here today, or at least I wouldn't be working today.
Yeah. 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 And that's the reality of it that a lot of us don't really think about. I've spoken to some others, spoken to someone recently in the healthcare industry, and the conversation was about that as well. The health risks, the health impact that comes with the territory of working excessively.
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes people are afraid to speak up, though. For
Mhm.
those who are, what's one small, powerful step that you think they can take toward beginning to change that type of reality?
I would say start with speaking up to those you do feel supported by, right? Talk it through with them. because I know a lot of people are afraid, right? They're afraid that they might get fired and just lose their job. They're afraid that they'll get treated very negatively, um, which is unfortunate. But I think part of it is, yes, use your support system, talk to your support system. They can help you find that courage. And I think it's also comes back to you are the only one that can advocate for what you need. And truth is, we're not going to change this unspoken culture if we don't start speaking up. And it's going to take all of us to start speaking up to get it to change.
Wow. That is so, so true. Uh, but I can't help but thinking that the system, the workplace is designed to keep people quiet. And you're absolutely correct about until we speak up about it, things are
Mm-hmm.
never going to change because people are afraid of losing their jobs. And sometimes it's the only way that they can live. That's the only mode of survival. That's how they feed their families. Right.
Right.
And it's hard if you think about someone, male or female, that they work these long hours and they're still trying to make ends meet. And when it doesn't work for them, it just leads to stress and other things. And I just don't see how uh, keeping quiet about it, helps. And it erodes their health, erodes their peace, everything, even their trust in leadership. I've seen it myself that happened in corporate. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to do. It's a hard pill to swallow just to stay quiet. uh, what would you, in your experience, what would you recommend besides speaking up? Is there anything from your experience that you could share that you think would help someone in that situation?
Um, I would say that if you're not using your time off, make sure you do, no matter what comments are going to come, right? Because again, I can't do self care for you, right? You have to. And so it's, yes, finding the courage to speak up. It's also being intentional to do what you know you need to. And that means use your time off. You accrue it for a reason, regardless of the stigma around using it, right? And so I would say make sure you're using it. Take that time off, do those things that you need to, regardless.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. When I was working that many hours, I wish someone would enforce that for me
Mm-hmm.
because there are a group of us that we felt that, oh, we're not going to use all of our accrued time off because we're gonna get paid out at the end of the year. And so we saw the dollar signs and didn't really see the fact that our health was really eroding in front of us. And it's like, well, okay, what's more important? But we wanted to bang those hours and who has the most hours to carry over. And sometimes it wasn't even carried over in some of those instances.
Right.
So it's yeah, I thank you for saying that. And I'm really hoping that others who will hear this episode, will listen to it, will take that heed. Take your time
Mhm.
off. It's yours. You accrued it. You deserved it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you worked there towards it. Wow. Now,
Mhm.
you've said that you had to rebuild yourself from the bottoms up. So,
Mhm.
to shift from where you were into, rebuilding from the ground up. What did that rebuilding process actually look like mentally, physically, and spiritually?
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to say that, and I do view it this way, right? When I left that town and that job, I went to one that I thought would be helpful, which it was not. It was the same or worse. However, the positive that came out of that for me was the facility closed, so I got to land on unemployment, which really gave me that take your time to breathe, right?
Yeah.
And I support people who feel like they need to kind of go down some of those routes, the FMLA and the time off. But I'm really why I'm on this mission is to help people not have to get to where I was, because my rebuilding from the ground up started with when I started that unemployment, I could not walk 100 feet without pain. I could not stand 10 minutes without pain. And that was all because of burnout, right? So when I say I started from the ground up, that's really where it was. Physically, I was at the bottom, right? I was one of those high school athletes. And then here I am years later and I couldn't move. And so my rebuilding started with finding, like, I was given that opportunity to take a breather financially, not have to work, right? Not have to worry about the finances. But I really started focusing on how to get my physical health back, right? Improving that. So that came with making sure I was working my muscles so that they were getting better, focusing on my nutrition. That's all my physical health, right? And today I can go for a 2 mile walk without pain. That was, so we're talking what, 6, almost 7 years now from when I started my recovery, 2019, August of 2019. So I did get to that point. I don't want people to hear that this is a 6 year process, because it's not, right? I got back to a 2 mile walk, I think within about a year. Took me a year to get back there. So it was learning to listen to my body, push it a little bit, but listen to it, right? So that's when we talk about the physical side. When we talk about more of the mental and spiritual, for me, spiritually, it was coming back to, I knew I was in the field that I was supposed to be. That's where I was called to work. But figuring out, one, how do I stay grounded, right? I mentioned earlier that one of the things that led me to know something was off was my morning routine was off. Those are the two pieces in my morning routine. I would get up and work out, and I would have my morning devotional time. And those are the first things I just tossed out the window. And so it was coming back to those foundations that I've always had in my life and staying connected to them. But then I think one of the bigger hurdles is it's a mindset, right? Because I can offer all these different tips, and I do, for managing stress on a day-to-day basis, but I had to change my mindset. And the biggest mindset shift I had to make was work is always there. We will never find the end of our to-do list at work. And so it's okay if I don't find the end each day, right? It's okay if I get 2 out of those 10 things done. I needed to be okay putting it away till the next day. So I had to make that shift, because I can work 50 to 60 hour weeks now, and I do sometimes. Excuse me, because I made those shifts. I made that mental shift. I am staying connected to my body and recognizing, okay, it's time to pull back for a while. So I do pull back, right? But that was quite the journey when I'm trying to hit all those foundations for me to get reconnected and to rebuild.
Wow. As you were making the shift, were there some non-negotiables that you had to set for yourself to prevent burnout from happening again?
Absolutely. I did. And one of my biggest non-negotiables, and I talk to a lot of my clients about this one, is sleep, right?
Mm.
Sleep is always the first thing we decrease when we're trying to find more time in our day to get more done. But that's actually counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. Because if you're trying to accomplish a project and you're really tired, you will take longer to get it done because you're tired, right? So to me, finding my optimal number of hours, right? yes, that's individual. And so I really hone in on let's make sure it's quality sleep, but that's really my first non-negotiable because when we sleep and we get that quality sleep, not only does our physical body recover, our brains recover, which means whatever comes the next day, we can handle easier because our brains have processed everything from the previous day when we're sleeping. So that's really what I would say one of, but it is the biggest one.
Huh. I need to take that for myself. Sleep is important. I need to I need to redo my time management so I can get enough sleep because I don't get enough of that. So thank you for sharing that. You mentioned your clients. Tell us about your company, about Wellness Essentials, right? Yeah, Wellness Essentials.
Yeah.
What inspired you to create it, first of all, and what do you help professionals do differently now? If one of them being sleep, what else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my company, Abundant Wellness Essentials, was really birthed out of my own journey, right? And in my recovery, I also started doing more research about it and research on stress in the body and doing presentations. And it really came about because if we look at statistics, right, I would say 40 to 50% of people in the workforce are experiencing burnout. And half of that 50% are contemplating leaving their career, meaning changing careers altogether, completely new field, start over. And we're having worked in the healthcare field for so long, we're already short staffed, right? And so it really came about of I want to see people stay in those careers because one of the things I've heard from clients over the years is I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I just don't know how I can keep going. So that's really where my business came from and where my mission came from because I want to see people be able to stay in the career and thrive and feel good. Um, and then as far as kind of what I do, through coaching and consulting, and I am currently putting together a couple of new workshops, is really helping people reconnect to themselves
Mhm.
so they can thrive, right? Thrive in the career they're called to, but thrive physically, spiritually, psychologically, like in all those areas. And I really I have foundational components. Sleep is one of those foundations that we talk about.
Mhm.
Um, but I really believe that if we're not grounded physically, spiritually, psychologically into our purpose, then any other area that we might talk about wellness wise will be a little bit more disjointed, right? And
Mhm.
I focus on multiple wellness areas, but I also do that because we talk about burnout in regards to work, but it comes from any other areas. We are all burnt out financially.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Uh, Good point. And you made some really, really compelling statements. And I'm so glad that you have started to, not have started, but you've decided to take your journey and transform that into something impactful that you can help others to heal from. Uh, so thank you for the work that you're doing. It is well needed, uh, not just in the health space, but in corporate space, because I can speak to that quite a bit. Wow. So
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah. I mean, you've developed a great system, it sounds like, to beat burnout and to reignite purpose. What are a
Mhm.
few key principles from your framework that our listeners can apply today?
Yeah, so we've already touched on one, right, which is sleep. So,
Yeah.
and I really advocate on that one. Focus on the quality, not the quantity, because the quantity doesn't matter if you're not getting that quality sleep first. So that's one of the key areas. A couple of the other key areas, I work a lot related to just kind of that emotional wellness and being able to regulate and manage conflict when it comes up, right? Because one of the things that I'll give you another example that we all tend to do this, and it just comes with this constant rat race we're in, right? The constant go. And that's when we get stressed or anxious, we hold our breath. Well, what happens when we hold our breath is our stress response is going to be quicker to activate during the next situation. And so we have to get back to some basics when it comes to we have to have those deep breaths going on, right? We have to learn how to keep our nervous system calm and learn to recover in between situations. I do offer a lot of practical tips to help people throughout the day, right? I hear things like I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how to get it all done. And so we do talk about some practical tips, right? Some micro pauses and some different things in there. Um, but we really work on regulating stressful situations, sleep, and then mindset, right? We have to shift our mindset because the concept of this is normal, I have to just push through, can't continue the normal, or people will land where I was.
Yeah, as you're talking and sharing about what you've been through, I can remember so many people have gone through that I've seen in my time, including myself. I've landed in the ER quite a few times from stress migraines,
Yep.
tension migraines, and
Yep.
it's never a good position to be in. Uh, at the cost of what? You know, and you mentioned about financial burnout,
Mhm.
right? It is costly. We're working towards something. We're working for that paycheck, and all the while we're putting our bodies through this pain to get the money, and sometimes it's not worth it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. How can leaders recognize the early warning signs of burnout in their teams? I mean, you were a leader, you understand, you've been on the teams, you see what goes on.
Mhm.
So, talk to me a little bit more about some of the early signs that you saw, not just in yourself, but did you see it in your teams at all or the people around you? And the fact that the response uh, may have been met with, or they have been met with a response of not empathy, but instead of judgment. Have you
Mhm.
seen that? How would you talk about what's the right move to do or to make in that situation?
Yeah. So I have seen that a lot. All of it. What I've seen is, like I mentioned before, right? One of it is the negative perception about taking time off. And that in itself is an easy shift for leaders, and that's support people to take time off. Take time off yourself so you can model. It's okay to take time off, right? We have to be okay with that. Um, as a leader, some of the things that I would see in employees who were probably headed towards burnout is um, if they're normally a happy-go-lucky person, social, and they start hiding in their office, something's wrong. Um, I've also seen employees who never get sick. All of a sudden, we're going to the doctor all the time because something was going on, right? So it's things that shift from what you've known to be for that person. That's really what we're looking for, which can be a subtle sign in different ways, right? For some, it's been getting quiet in meetings when they used to be engaging. And so paying attention to who do you know that person to have always been, and has something changed?
Mhm.
Because if something's changed, there probably needs to be a conversation and support to figure it out and change it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And someone hearing this may say, yes, Deidre, that's easier said than done. Yes, Joe, it's easier said than done. But it's a decision for a leader. It's a decision that you have to make. I understand that there's a heavy workload and the deadlines are fast and furious, right?
Mhm.
But you have to take a step back and realize that the people, your support system, your support team, meaning your team members that you're over or leading, uh, you can't afford to lose one of those
Mhm.
team members, especially because you're trying to meet this deadline. And
Right.
you're so busy, you're so focused on going, going, going that you're not even thinking about that team member, to your point, Deidre, who is no longer performing and being their normal self because they're burnout,
Mhm.
and sometimes I have to wonder what's the easier way around it, because and this is why I was so excited to talk to you about this because I've lived it, I've seen it around me. And uh, once I took a step back from corporate, I wanted to get back into it. And then I started to think, why do I want to get back into something like that?
Mm.
Now I see where I can help to bring this awareness and help leaders to be more aware and be more mindful that there's a way to do there's a got to be a better way. There's a better way that we can lead. There's a better
Mhm.
way that we can move forward and prevent this type of burnout in people, especially for those who won't speak up for themselves. And so,
Mm.
for you and I, people like ourselves, I guess this is where we have to use our voice to help those who are voiceless, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
How has your definition of success changed since walking through your burnout? Now that you've shifted and you've come on the other side, how has it changed for you?
That's a great question. And I would say that success now is about, do I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose and am I okay with how I'm doing that? Right. So instead of getting on the hamster wheel of what is our current healthcare system, I did that for a long time. That's not sustainable for anybody. And so it's looking at, it really comes back again to the why, right? Why am I doing this? Because if I stay connected to that, then success is, am I taking steps every day towards that? Also, am I feeling fulfilled in those other areas of life? Right? Am I putting enough time into those other areas? Because I'm not a one-dimensional person. I don't just work. I have family that I help, right? And whatnot. And so it's coming back to priorities, right? When I talk about balance, I talk a lot about priorities, and that priorities change based on the seasons we're in life.
Yeah.
And so if I'm focused on, okay, what's my priority in this season, then success is, am I moving towards that? And am I taking care of myself as well? That has to be part of success.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
Absolutely right. Wow. You've seen both sides. You've
Mhm.
seen the counselor side who helps and the human side who's been there, who's
Mhm.
walked through that journey, that hard path. What's one truth about burnout that most people get wrong?
So the one that comes to mind is that people think I can just change jobs and it'll go away.
Mm,
It won't,
wow.
right? It is part of the territory of most any job you could have.
Mhm.
Which, yes, I know we talked briefly that there's systemic things that can change, but just changing jobs doesn't fix it, right? If you talk about, I had those three incidences, 3 episodes of burnout, each one was at a different company and a different stage in my career. That's where part of my recovery journey was exploring with myself. Why did I keep getting there? I have individual things to do. So changing jobs won't fix it. Just part of the shift.
I love it. I love that you call that out because it's a vicious cycle that we
Mm-hmm,
put ourselves through and put ourselves in.
mm-hmm,
Uh, so we have to be the ones to change because our environment will not change,
mm-hmm,
especially with AI now in the picture
mm-hmm.
and and the challenge of that, and people are trying to compete with AI. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you doing that? It makes it more. And then as they're cutting back headcounts,
Mm-hmm,
uh, they're told to do more with less. And this is not new. I've heard that years ago, and I think it's still even more true today. You have to do more with less. And so they think, okay, this is not working out, so let me go to a different location, and it's the same thing.
mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you called that out. Yeah, it's a personal decision that you have to make, that I am no longer going to do this and put
Right.
myself through this. Right?
Right.
Wow. Finish this sentence for me, Deidre. Silence in the workplace becomes dangerous when what?
Oh, becomes dangerous when people do nothing. Nobody speaks up.
Ooh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that they don't speak up. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
right. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Straight to the point. Uh yeah, just not using their voice, and it becomes very dangerous when that happens. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just team, but also leaders, because leaders have leaders.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. What does it mean to you now to live and to lead with abundance instead of exhaustion?
Mm. It means having the energy and the joy to do whatever I'm doing, right? I look forward to what I do, and that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also have the energy to do it, right? And the
Yeah.
stamina to do it, and that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. I love it because you can love what you do and still don't have the energy to do it because you're too exhausted to even get up in the morning to do
Mm-hmm.
it. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell us, how can people support you and connect with you to learn more about your wellness work? Because it sounds so interesting, and I love that you're sharing uh that you've walked through it. So you're not doing something to help people from what you've just researched or what you read, but you've actually walked through this. So I
Mm-hmm.
want people to be able to connect with you and to learn more about your work.
Yeah, I would say the best way is just to go to my website, abundantwellnessessentials.com. And if you go to /consult, I'm happy to connect. It's a free consult, but my website's the best place. Like you said, I've walked this journey myself. This is also the systems I've put in place. I've also done with clients over the last 6 years and have seen success there. So it's not just my journey. I've walked clients through the same journey.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Any uh other words that you want to share, words of wisdom, any encouragement, anything else that you want to add as we kind of wrap it up and kind of just I want you to put a nice little bow on it
Yeah.
for our
I
audience.
I would just say that to those listening, you have the abilities in yourself to do what you need to do, and you need to trust that because we all know what we need. And that was part of my journey, right? When I started trusting myself, things changed. So you do have the abilities, just trust yourself.
That's it. That's it. So, as we wrap up today, what Deidre just shared is something we all needed to hear. We all need to hear that today. Now is a time we're in the thick of things and we're so challenged with all the things that we have to do on our daily duties, not just at work, but in our communities and in life. Burnout isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal that something sacred inside us needs care. Something inside you need care. The cost
Mhm.
of silence is always higher than the cost of honesty, in my opinion. And the moment you start, naming your exhaustion, naming what that looks like for you, you've already started your healing. And that's a good sign that you know what it is. And so you're naming it. So,
Mhm.
to everyone listening, your health, your peace, and your purpose, they are not negotiable. And I want you to remember that rest isn't earned. You heard Deidre said it. Sleep is important,
Mhm.
right? It's essential. So
Mhm.
thank you for listening, for joining us today on Unrestrained Boldness.